My name is Maciej Olszewski. I'm a PhD student at University of Hohenheim in Stuttgart. And today I would like to give you some presentation about wet feedstock conversion into biowaste carbon materials. So short agenda for today's speech. Firstly, I will introduce our group, what are tasks or what are we doing. The project. Then I will present some results and show the main conclusion of this work. So starting with our group, so what are we doing? We are working mostly with bio-based carbon materials. We are also working with platform chemicals and bioplastics, nutrient recovery, first part, which is the bio-based carbon materials. So why carbon materials? This is the question. In the previous years, we can observe that the demand for carbon materials, mainly biochar, is increasing over the world. On this chart, that there is around 15% annually increase of the demand for biochar. So it is expected that in next 6 years, it will grow around 90%. So where are they used, these carbon materials? So now it's a lot of research and also first application. Which has to be clarified, which kind of biochar can be used legally in the field to really improve the quality of the soil and not cause toxic effects or something like this. Then also the big market for biochar is it's a barbecue char, and also two pathways that can lead to production of biochar. First one is a dry conversion, which is very well developed and known, for example, pyrolysis or torrefaction gasification. And the other pathway is hydrothermal. And now is the question, and it's maintaining the liquid phase. So the water reaction has to be under elevated pressure according to the vapor pressure of water. And usually this is carried out in the subcritical water condition. It means (2.1 megapascal). And this technology was firstly developed in early 18. And going further, here we can see the water saturation pressure curve. So to produce carbon material, bars, and it can go up to 260 Celsius degree, which corresponds to 47 bars of pressure inside of the reactor. So what are the advantages of hydrothermal conversion? First of all, in hydrothermal system, less energy is required for heating of water when we want to dry our biomass, in this case, wet biomass, which contain a lot of moisture. Then the second point is the much better heat transfer compared to dry processing, because the liquid reaction medium has much better quicker time and also more uniform compared to the pyrolysis reactors. And in our system, water is a solvent, catalyst, and partly reactant. So if the biomass has a lot of moisture for hydrothermal processing, this is the advantage. Then this is the short explanation how it looks in the lab scale. So on the left, we can see some kind of wet biomass, which is placed in the batch reactor. In this case, it's autoclave with a volume of 250 milliliters. Black or brownish slurry, depends on the temperature used in the process. Then how it looks in the small scale. So here in this picture, you can see the smallest autoclaves that we have in our lab. So they are around 20 milliliters. So make a scale up of this reactor, and we have 5 liters lab scale reactor. And we also cooperate with the industry, with the company HT Cycle, which developed the full scale plant for conversion of 16,000 tons of biomass per year. So as you can see, it starts from the very small lab scale to the industrial scale. However, there is not a lot of application yet because of the regulation of the hydrochar produced. So let's take a look at the properties of hydrochars. So basically, after hydrothermal carbonization, the hydrochars are in the range of lignite when it's coming to the heating value as well as carbon content. However, these hydrochars may have a toxic effect for plants due to the saturation with organic compounds, for example, phenols, which are created during the process. So there is another question or important task that if we want to apply this charge for the soil amendment, we have to remove the toxic compounds, and we can do that coupling hydrothermal carbonization with pyrolysis, for example. And this will be the next step what I want to say today. And coming to my current work, this is the process overview for the carbon material production. So we are starting with a wet biomass, which contains from 90 to 85% of moisture. Then this kind of biomass can be mechanically dewatering, where we remove the part of the water, and we can reduce the moisture content to 70–80%, depends on used technology. Then if it's coming to classical process with the dry processing, we have to dry our biomass to moisture content around 15–10%. And then we can do pyrolysis. So we produce, let's call it pyrochar. But is there any alternative way to produce carbon materials using wet feedstock? Because as all we know, the drying is very thermal expensive process. So we need a lot of heat to dry the biomass containing such high moisture content. So here is coming the hydrothermal carbonization, because as I said, in this process, our moisture content is the advantage. So we can process directly biomass containing high moisture content. And in this process, we produce wet hydrochar, which has better hydrophobic properties. So it means that we can use mechanical dewatering again. and reduce the moisture in the char to 50, maybe 40%, also depends on the used technology. And then we have to dry again this char. However, we can see that the moisture content is decreased significantly here. And we can do again pyrolysis to produce the pyrochar and remove the toxic compounds from the hydrochar. And this is scenario B in this presentation. Then is coming the question if the integration of HTC and pyrolysis can improve the properties of biowaste carbon materials. So on the left side, we have scenario A, where we use one-step process, so pyrolysis, and in scenario B, we have two-step process, which include hydrothermal carbonization and further pyrolysis. Then, why I focus to using brewer spent grains? Because the worldwide beer production is very huge. It's around 190 billion liters produced annually, which corresponds to around 40 million tons of wet spent grains produced over the world. And the share of beer production is present in this graph. So the biggest producer of beer residues are Asia and both Americas. Then the third place is Europe, and the last is Africa and Australia. So here I will show you how I did the experiments for this work. So hydrothermal carbonization was performed using batch autoclaves with the volume of 250 milliliters. I tested 3 different temperatures, 180, 220, and 260 Celsius degree. And I used fixed reaction time, which was around 1 hour preheating to achieve the temperature, and then 4-hour residence time. And after this time, the reactors were quenched in the water to reduce the temperature to 20 Celsius degree. After that, I did the pyrolysis using alumina crucibles in a muffle oven at 4 different temperatures. I use 400, 600, 800, and 1000 Celsius degree, and the fixed reaction time of 2 hours. And then I will like to present you some results. So first of all, thermogravimetric analysis of the char. So I produce from brewer spent grains 3 different hydrochar at different temperatures. And then these materials were analyzed using TGA. And as you can see, the orange line corresponds to the raw brewer spent grains. And we can observe that the pyrolysis yield was the lowest for this material. Then increasing the or conducting the hydrothermal carbonization, we can observe significantly higher yield of the char produced, and then further increase of the temperature during the hydrothermal carbonization increased the yield of the pyrolysis char, which is shown by this arrow. And then the correspond DTG of the curves obtained in TGA showed the typical degradation for lignocellulosic biomass, where the orange curve corresponds to brewer spent grains. So we can see the first peak related to hemicellulose, and the second one related to the cellulose, as well as the residual peak, which corresponds to lignin. However, in this case, brewer spent grains contain a lot of proteins. Therefore, this residual peak can also be corresponded to degradation of protein. And then after the hydrothermal carbonization, we can observe that at mild condition, it means 180 degrees, the hemicellulose is converted, which shows this curve, that the peak for hemicellulose is gone. And further increase in hydrothermal carbonization temperature reduce the cellulose content in the hydrochar. And the highest temperature of 260 leads to full decomposition of cellulose and increase or appear of the peak here, which can be related to the hydrochar structure, as well as the composition of more stable polymer parts of hydrochar. Yeah. Then going to mass yields of char produced in each process. The orange bar corresponds to 100%, so no HTC. Then if we perform HTC at 180 degrees, our yield is decreased to around 70%. If we conduct the process at 220, the yield is around 50%, and the highest temperature leads to the yield of around 40%. And what happens next if we paralyze these chars? Let's take a look. So pyrolysis of biomass resulted in the yield of around 37%, and then pyrolysis of hydrochars results in very similar yields, and then further HTC, higher HTC temperature leads to the decrease in the mass yield of final pyrochars. So when talking about the coupling of both processes, the most beneficial HTC condition is low temperature treatment. So in this case, around 180 Celsius degree. And then I want to show you the carbon conversion, how the mass yields correspond to the carbon conversion delivered in the biomass. So the trend is very similar, and we can observe that coupling of both processes can slightly increase the carbon conversion from biomass to the final pyrochar. And this increase is around 4%. Then let's take a look at some proximate analysis. So we can observe here the volatile matter, ash content, and fixed carbon of raw BSG, as well as produced hydrochar. And I selected for this comparison pyrochar produced at 600 degrees from brewer's pen grains, as well as from all the 3 hydrochars. So we can observe, comparing the properties of one process pyrolysis of BSG, the ash content is around 12%. However, if we use coupling of both processes, we can reduce the ash content of our final char due to the removal of inorganics in subcritical water condition, as well as pyrolyzed hydrochar resulted in higher fixed carbon content and lower volatile matter compared to one-step process. Then let's take a look for elemental analysis of the char, and we can observe here that one-step pyrolysis of brewer's pen grains resulted in around 72.5% of carbon, and two-step process show a little bit of increase in carbon content. However, the calorific value in the last column, we can observe that it was the highest for the hydrothermal carbonization at 260 degrees. So the pyrolysis char resulted in lower heating value compared to the one process HTC in this case. So it means that if we want to produce char for energy purposes, for combustion, it can be beneficial to use only high temperature hydrothermal carbonization instead of pyrolysis, or even both pyrolysis and hydrothermal carbonization. And I would like to show you some nitrogen isotherms for the materials. Again, I choose biochars produced at 600 degrees because they show the highest surface area. So for one-step process, the surface area was around 82 square meters per gram. This value is not so high. However, the spent grains doesn't have a structure, real structure to create some high pores compared to wood, for example. And again, we can observe that the highest surface area was obtained for two-step process at mild condition during hydrothermal treatment. And it was around 70% higher compared to two-step process. And the middle temperature of HTC also improved the surface area, and the highest treatment leads to the lower surface area compared to the one-step process. Then I want to show you some micrographs of the materials. So this is the biochar produced at 600 degrees from brewer's pen grains. Then we have hydrochar at 180 and then pyrolyzed at 600 and 220 and 260. And what we can see here that they show the heterogeneous structures and non-uniform particle shape, and they look very similar. So it means that the high temperature pyrolysis treatment leads to the metastable state of the material. Then I want to show you some conclusion. So the findings from this study is that the two-step process is beneficial due to the higher carbon content of the final biochar, higher surface area, as well as higher carbon conversion to the char. And the char mass yield is like between both scenario depends on the condition used in the pretreatment. Then I want to show you to the next planned steps. So I'm planning to evaluate the energy efficiency of one-step pyrolysis of brewer's pen grains and compare it to two-step process, and as well estimate some economics aspects for such a solution. And I would like to say many thanks to Sabina, Nicolae, and Maria Magdalena Titirici for FTIR and SEM measurements and supporting the interpretation of data. And here are some recent publications from my work. And thank you for your attention.